Good evening and welcome to the Financial Review Committee meeting of January 25th, 2022. Madam Secretary, will you please provide a roll call?
When your name is called, please answer with here or present. Member Amezcua?
Here.
Member Federico?
Here.
Member Killebrew?
Here.
Vice Chair Frost?
Here.
Chair Mitchell?
Here.
For the record, all members of the Financial Review Committee are present.
Okay, we'll move on to the public comments portion of the meeting. There's a 3-minute time limit per person and an overall time limit of 15 minutes for the public comments portion of the agenda. All comments are to be directed to the Financial Review Committee and shall not consist of any personal attacks. Members of the public are expected to maintain professional, courteous decorum during their comments. State law prohibits the Financial Review Committee from taking action on specific items unless it appears on the agenda. Madam Secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments at this time.
Okay, we will move forward to new business. Item 1, organization of the Financial Review Committee. We need an election of a chair and election of a vice chair. Does the Financial Review Committee have any nominations for chair and vice chair?
We'll just keep it as the same.
I was actually going to nominate you to be chair.
Oh, but I spoke first.
You qualified that. The chair always speaks first. I'll second that motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Second Raul's motion?
Yeah.
For Raul to be chair.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, you're kidding? No,
Wait.
you.
Which?
You,
Whose motion are you seconding?
Wait.
I'm seconding her motion.
My
You're
motion.
seconding her
Oh,
motion.
Well, do we need to consider his first, or?
Right.
Madam Chair, you're in charge. What would you
Madam
like to do?
Chair,
Is there a lawyer in
point
the
of
house?
order. Does Mr. Amescua's nomination need a second? Because if it doesn't, it could die without a second. Often, certain boards, you don't need a second for nominations, but
Yeah, it's true.
I think in our city council meetings, we do seconds for nominations. So I assume here we would do the same.
That sounds good.
And I think his doesn't have a second.
No, yours does not.
Okay. Hot potato.
You've seconded
Okay.
Ms.
I'll-
Mitchell's.
I will second Ms. Mitchell's.
Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
Great.
Are you okay?
I'm
Very good.
gonna,
I wanna make
I'm
sure
gonna call
it's-
for a
yeah.
vote.
Oh, I'm so
Okay.
sorry.
Yeah.
I got excited.
Are you
Like,
cool
no.
with it, Raul, for real?
Yeah, yeah.
Seriously.
No, I'm good.
You're
I'm good.
You're gonna be great.
Okay, Member Amezcua?
I can vote for myself?
Yeah.
Hey.
Member Federico?
Aye.
Member Killebrew?
Aye.
Vice Chair Frost?
Aye.
Chair Mitchell?
Aye.
This motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Now we need a recommendation for a vice chair.
He's supposed to say it.
Oh, yeah.
So,
You're already done.
It
Although I
happens
need my
immediately?
notes.
Really? I'll just sit here.
Okay,
But does it happen immediately or is it effective the next one?
Immediately.
right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So now we need where am I here?
So call.
Election of a vice chair. I have right here.
Oh no, those have notes
Oh
on
my
there
God,
for
this
you.
one has notes, so everything in blue is what you read.
Oh, I
You
see.
can say it
Got
better.
Got it. Okay, so nomination for election of a vice chair. Can you seek volunteers or?
I'll nominate myself if nobody else wants to do it.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
So we take a
Yeah.
vote?
So Member Federico?
Yes.
Member Killebrew?
Yes.
Member Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost?
Yes.
Chair Amezcua?
Yes.
This vote passes by a vote of 5-0.
Great. Okay, so the next item is approval of the minutes from the October 26, 21 FRC meeting.
I'll move to approve the minutes.
Second.
Take a vote.
Member Federico?
Yes.
Member Killebrew?
Yes.
Member Mitchell?
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost?
Aye.
Chair Amezcua?
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
So this motion passes by a vote of 4-0-1 with Chair Amezcua abstaining.
Okay. And the third item we have is the quarterly financial report ending December 31st. So ask for staff report.
This is the quarterly report for fiscal year 21-22. So it's through July through December 21, and total general fund revenues totaled 19.4 million. And really, the story here is TOT. We had record receipts for the first 6 months of the year. Total TOT for the first 6 months was 7.9 million. Total general fund expenditures is at 18.3 million. Nothing really notable, except we had an increase of salaries about 166,000, police services 122,000, and safety and lighting expenses of 103,000. And that concludes the staff report.
So the TOT record was a record forever in the history of the city for the first 6 months?
Every
Every
month.
month.
Every month? Wow. That is
But-
excellent.
It's not looking good for January, so
Why is that?
Omicron.
Oh,
We're getting reports of last minute cancellations for 40% of the booked business.
wow.
But we're still in budget.
What was the cause of the increase in police services?
Contract costs. Just overall, the contract went up, so cost went up.
Can I go off the record and like ask a question that's not gonna be recorded or might be recorded
You're
The whole
being
way?
recorded.
the whole way?
Yeah.
Okay. That was good to know. No, there's a discussion on next door, which I never see, but I happen to look at it on overtime for sheriffs.
It's related.
But I guess I would say that I'm not a next door fan, but whatever, there were 29 comments, and I would say that 27 were positive. Like, they deserve it, they heard it, we should have more police, we shouldn't complain, you know, so it was all extremely supportive. Or whatever that's worth.
I think it's relevant, and I would just, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. You know, a certain amount of overtime is part of our budgeted planning for police services, and so it doesn't bother me if a certain deputy or sergeant is earning a certain amount of overtime. You know, that quite frankly, it's cheaper to pay overtime than it is to hire another full-time deputy.
Right.
So as far as fiscal responsibility goes, you know, I understand, I tend to think those comments are ill-informed, except it's great to hear people,
Yeah.
you know, don't mind us spending, but anyone who thinks negatively about spending money on police overtime just doesn't get how that contract works. You know, how our budget
And I think for
works.
most essential services, they're experiencing overtime, right, because of COVID, people are out on COVID, whether it's a doctor, a fireman, or a police officer, there's just the environment we're dealing with. I read the report, I really don't have any comments, I was pleasantly surprised with all the good news.
Mr. Chair, could I just ask a couple quick questions? Yeah. See on, sort of the main page of the quarterly report itself, can you just sort of summarize, like under the budgeted fund balance summary, we had a $4.3 million transfer out.
Right, so if that's a budget, so this is the budgeted fund balance.
Right.
So right now we have 4.3 million transfer out of the general fund. Most of that is to the CIP,
Mm-hmm.
about 100,000 to the facilities improvement fund.
Mm-hmm.
We've made the CIP transfer so far, and we just have to do the 100,000.
That's what I was just kind of wondering is how
Yeah.
we are tracking on the stuff, and our reserves are still
100%.
Fully funded.
100%
Yep.
fully funded,
Plus unassigned overfunded.
and we're overfunded on our unassigned, right?
And we'll be talking
Just
about
super
that.
big pictures. I just like getting
Yeah.
a big picture update. Okay,
Yeah.
that's really my only question.
Yeah, the overfunded we'll be talking about on our mid-year report, which is what we told you back in September on our rollover report.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
A couple quick, just
Yeah,
a couple
please.
quick questions. Mike, do you happen to know, has Raintree been reassessed, and are we receiving those?
They're coming in supplementals. I'm not sure that it hit yet. We could actually pull that up and look at it. It's good going to our HDL report.
I was just curious what it was assessed at, actually.
Oh, I actually had that at one point in time. It's based on valuations, so.
Wait,
It's not like market value, it's construction valuations. So original value of the original purchase value of the property plus the market valuations from the improvements that were valued through our magic box over there that places values on things. It usually happens pretty quick though, with certificate of occupancy.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, I'll look at, I'm just curious what it was. And then the franchise fees. I just thought of this now. If AT&T is stringing some fiber, I think they're stringing fiber up top, or they're running lines next to Cox. How does that work with our franchise agreements?
We get a percentage of revenue.
Okay, so there kind of is no upfront agreement.
We'll look at it.
Okay.
I heard the same thing.
I heard they're
AT&T's stringing some fiber in the Lantern district.
Yeah.
They are, and they've strung fiber in in Capo a while ago, but I don't know if they're actually.
Seems ridiculous.
We don't think they have the
doesn't do all this.
backbone to connect it to you. That's what
Right.
we just had this conversation with Matt yesterday.
But they can do anything they want on the polls, right? Like, they don't tell us necessarily, they just go and.
But
Yeah,
once
they're not informing anybody of their game plans, because even when they come pull permits to do the micro trenching and stuff, we get no details on what they're doing because of terrorist
trade
threats.
secrets.
No, it's literally, that's the policy from PUC down, but they don't share. You'll see them out in the street, and we honestly don't know exactly what they're doing, other than we get a permit for the size of the trench, the length of it, the days they're there. It's all top secret.
So that in theory, I'm speculating, that what they might be stringing on the utility poles could be connections for 5G network, like
Could
have
be.
2 little 5G emitters.
I
that
can't
talk to
imagine
each
what
other.
else it would be.
Yeah, it's gotta be 5G.
And once if they start opening up shop and start providing services for folks, they automatically need to kick back 1% to us.
We'll have to look at the franchise agreement, but
Okay. That was those.
Same for cell, like if AT&T is putting this stuff up there to manage their cellular 5G network, I think everyone assumes, oh, it must be for a home telephone or cable or something. But you can't even get AT&T cable in Capitol Beach or the Lantern District. So it's gotta be for 5G, and so we're not gonna get a percentage of
not for
what
cell.
they're getting on cell phone bills. We're not gonna get anything.
Got it. And why would they need to run it there? Why would they run it? Just AT&T works now.
Regular AT&T, your 4G works, but 5G requires all sorts of little antennas all over the place. And
Got
you need
it.
to talk to each other. I'm guessing that it's got something to do with 5G. I don't know why else AT&T would be running anything on power poles.
Yeah, when I asked our staff, what are they doing? No clue.
Would they not run it to compete internet-wise? Cox?
Yeah, but if it's cellular, we don't have a dog in that game, in that hunt, so.
Can they even, first of all, internet fiber doesn't hang from telephone poles. It dries up in the sun, so it can't be.
I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. Whatever that little stringy hickey coming from the pole down to the house that lets you turn on ESPN.
I'll actually send somebody up on a bucket truck to look at the cable to see what it is.
The reason why I'm asking is because I had cops come out for our property, and the guy said, "Oh, I can't touch that one. That's AT&T's. I'm not allowed to." So, anyway, okay.
I'm just curious, the cash and investments, that total $50.8 million, like which funds own that cash? Just in broad strokes.
We have
Is
a,
that
we have a
Colonel's looking
99,
for it?
we have a 99 in here.
Is it under the same item, the small font thing?
Well, we have all the funds in here, so you'll see claim on cash. So we should have a Fund 98, actually. No, we used to include it. Double check. No?
What's his name?
He's looking at our pooled cash fund.
Oh, cool cash.
Well, we don't have it in this report, it is in the,
it's in
monthly
this.
treasurer report. But you'll see, we have all the fund balance sheets in here and every one of them.
Yeah.
If you get Fund 98 for the pooled cash, it'll actually have the equity section with all the,
Also,
all the
right,
owners
so-
of it listed, yeah.
But like in broad strokes, who's the biggest? Obviously the general fund reserves.
General fund, CIP fund, and likely the trust account for all the deposits we have would be the other one. That's the right place. Trust has 11.
And the trust is for what?
These are all the deposits we take in for all of our planning, building, engineering, and other things. Not our money yet.
Yeah.
And then let's see, CIP has 12.4.
Oh, there you go.
And
Trust all the reserves and unassigned cash.
general funds of 19.
I think it's close. Alright. Any other questions on item number 3?
Actually, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, I do have one more, since Mr. Frost brought up franchise fees. Mike, you know that conversation we had a couple weeks ago about franchise fees?
Mhm.
I think it's worth just a sort of quick, get a feel for how the committee feels about that topic.
We could put it on a future agenda.
Yeah, to talk about it in the future.
So, next agenda, a discussion about, franchise fees from AT&T, possible,
All
okay.
of them. I mean, franchise fees.
Cox, yeah, to discuss possible, policy consideration to reserve them for specific uses.
Oh, I see where you're going.
Yeah,
I
carve
see
them out.
where you're going.
They right now, they go to the general fund. And, I just wanna discuss what the implications would be on our budget if we carved them out into their own separate fund and used.
We have one other situation where the city council directed to carve out the the Lantern Village, impact fee to go to the Doheny Village beautification account.
That's
So we
right, I remember that a long time.
Yeah. Alright, so. Just write PAL next to it, P-A-L.
I knew.
PAL.
You're secretly cringing.
I don't make policy.
Okay, no other questions. I will ask for a motion.
Second.
Who made it?
What are we doing?
Who made the
Making a motion.
Motion to receive and file?
File.
Receive and file.
I make a motion to receive and file the quarterly financial report.
And second?
Second. I'm sorry, I thought.
Okay, take the roll, please.
Member Federico,
Yes.
Member Killebrew,
Aye.
Member Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost,
Yes.
Chair Mitchell, Amasco.
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Great. Next is item number 4, which is the annual review of the investment policy. Noted it said updated, so I kind of read through it looking for the changes. I couldn't,
The dates.
the dates.
That's all I saw too. I wanted to make sure I was.
All right,
missing
so-
something.
Yeah, I did see that the Davis Farr made no recommendation, so it's all the same from last year, we're just,
Yeah,
Yeah,
Davis
and-
Farr reviewed it to make sure it was still in compliance with the government code, and it's
Yeah.
all in compliance, and there were no changes.
suggested. Okay,
And it's a government code requirement that the city council adopted each year, so
review and adopt it, yeah. And we do the review every year, right?
it's part of our audit.
Are we gonna have too much money in life? And that historically, we've had too high a percentage of our money in life or something like that.
I think we updated on the last, we did do an additional, we actually made the 5-year, T-note investment.
Right.
So we had gone down to, we had let 2 mature without renewing just for cash concerns with COVID. We made 1 5-year, and as the markets are changing, we're gonna try and get back into the design of having laddered portfolio 1 through 5 year for, you know, half the portfolio.
We had talked about that at the last meeting. Has there been any action on that?
We did the one,
So we had one that had matured in 2020 that we didn't reinvest into new note because of rates. So this last October, we had that money, and then we had another note maturing. We reinvested the one that was maturing the 5-year in another 5-year, but we didn't reinvest the money from the previous
So we
year into
still
a
have
4-year.
there's a rung missing in
Because
our
those,
ladder.
yeah, those rates were just still really low for the shorter term notes.
But by the end of this year,
Rates should get better for sure by the end of this year.
Another one, so.
Okay, any other further discussion, questions? If not, this is a receive and discuss. Do we take a vote on those?
Yeah.
Okay, so need a motion to receive and discuss.
All motion.
Second.
Member Federico,
Yes.
Member Killebrew,
Yes.
Member Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost,
Yes.
Chair Mesco.
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Okay, item number 5 is the Coastal Animal Service Authority unfunded pension liability update. So I ask for a staff report.
Yes, so the city is a member of the CASA JPA for animal sheltering and control services, and right now the CASA employees are under a pension plan through a private company, Milliman Inc. And Councilmember Federico asked this be added to the agenda to discuss the current unfunded liability, or Dana Point's portion of the unfunded liability, which as of June 30th, 2021 was a little over $300,000.
Mr. Chair, I could probably add some color commentary to that if you're interested. If the committee is interested. One of the reasons I want to bring this up is because one of the reasons it's got to this point is because no one's paid attention for so many years, and I wanted to just bring it to everyone's awareness. You know, not only do our own employees have it, our own city hall has an unfunded liability, but that agency has one as well. We're trying to take some steps. Well, let me start with, this is important in the near term because CASA has applied to move these employees from the Milliman privately run pension fund that is a legacy City of San Clemente fund into CalPERS. If and when that approval happens, CalPERS is going to ask for some amount of money written in a check to buy down this unfunded liability. It's about 70% funded right now. Is that correct, Mike? See, do you guys remember?
It's about 75%.
75% funded. They're gonna probably want at least 80, and we've heard them say maybe 90% funded to get into CalPERS. So that will require a check. The agency itself doesn't have the money to do it, so the two member cities will be asked to make a contribution. So something for us to think about, you know, whether that comes out of that pot of money that's already set aside for pensions that we're gonna talk about next, or somewhere else. We just need to be prepared for that, and know that this is a liability that we have. So that's that part of it. The rest of the story is we are trying to do some stuff at that agency to become more fiscally responsible and reduce this, but the reality is this is old legacy stuff that we're sort of stuck with.
How are they funded for operations?
How are they funded? They are funded by charging service fees to the two member cities, basically in the same percentage that you see right there, 32 and 68. City of Dana Point pays 32% of the bill. They have two separate budget lines over there, one for animal control, the uniformed animal control officers, the dog wardens, and one for animal sheltering. And we pay into those two funds, which is basically a charge for service from the agency to the two member cities.
And we pay for it out of the general fund?
Yeah.
There's no like specific revenue stream?
Yeah, no, the agency itself does generate some revenue, so that offsets whatever the charge for services are.
And they get quite a bit of cost covered by the Pet Project Foundation.
They get a huge amount of money, a very large amount of money, that is paid for, by the Pet Project Foundation. They've got it's a unique sort of setup, government agency that provides required government services, and they've got a partner nonprofit who is in the building with them, who covers a lot of the.
So it's an animal shelter as well?
It's an animal.
Oh,
It's
okay.
a physical animal shelter.
Got it.
In addition to having animal control officers.
Got it.
They generate revenue from licensing. So in theory, everyone who has a dog or cat has a pet license. Adoption fees, citations, but it is a losing. It is a money losing venture.
Yeah.
It's a service.
And how often is that 3268 split evaluated?
Annually,
Annual, okay.
based on population for animal control and based on number of calls for service or number of
It's mostly number of licensed animals.
licensed animals for. Yeah, it's a goof. That one's a little bit of a goofy setup because the irony is you can in theory cheat that by having fewer licensed animals, but then you're cheating the agency by lowering their revenue on number of licenses. But there's a agreed upon long 1995
Yeah.
when the agency was formed, agreed upon formula for how to split that cost.
How much
Okay,
do they
seems
run in the
fair.
deficit every year?
90%.
Yeah.
I mean, if
But
budgets.
the licensing fees are set in a manner that they don't disincentivize people to get licensed.
Yeah.
Because they want to make sure that the animals are spayed, neutered, vaccinated. So it's public safety.
Yeah,
design.
The challenge, the real challenge we have is percentage of licensed animals. We're well under 50%. Even if we hit, the reality is even if we hit 100% on all the animals being licensed, it still would not break even over there. It's we've got some other things that we need to do to try to make that.
Are you on the CASA board?
I am our city's representative to the CASA board, and I am trying to find ways to make it more of a fiscally responsible agency that we are a member of. I'm trying really hard.
And does Millman want the CASA to exit, or are they?
Milliman would love CASA to exit. Milliman hates being in the defined benefit
The
pension business.
private sector started getting out of this about a decade ago.
Yeah, they, the city of San Clemente shopped around. The city of San Clemente got all of their city employees into CalPERS
2014.
in 2014. For some goofy administrative reason, they kind of didn't get things right. CASA didn't get the CASA employees into CalPERS at the same time, so they were stuck with it's Milliman, and it's actually run by somebody else. It's their pension keeps getting kind of
Shifted.
it's the name is Milliman now, but it's actually I think someone else manages
They
the money.
had been Great West
Ew.
back in.
Everyone's
12
getting out of
years
the
ago,
defined
and
benefit business.
Great
for
West
good
got
reason.
out of it.
Yeah.
So up until 2 years ago, the JPA was its own corporation in the eyes of for all liabilities. So the liability would not have transferred to the cities; it would have been with the JPA. But state law changed 2 years ago that pierced that corporate veil, and the liabilities for unfunded pension liabilities now go to the member agencies.
At the time, the agency didn't have the financial strength to be members of CalPERS. They were like 65% funded and no revenue stream. No
So
money
we are
set
on the
aside.
hook for this. I mean,
By-
previously we would have been on the hook just, if we wanted to kind of do the right thing. Now we're legally on the hook as of 2019.
AB, whatever it was,
There's been so many
that
ABs.
makes us.
So the reason I believe you said you wanted this on the agenda for this meeting was because you wanted to talk about how this fits into the strategic plan and do some budget shifting? Is that what
Well,
your intention was?
Not the strategic plan, but just the long-term financial plan, and this segues into what we're about to talk to next, the 115 trust. I wanna make sure we don't lose sight of the fact that we owe $334,000 to Casa's pension before we make decisions on what we're gonna do with the $4.5 million we have set aside for pension money. So, you know, I might even say, do we earmark 335,000 of that, or do we, you know, what do we do? I don't know the answer. I just want to make sure this is not lost, and then we're like bummed out later that we owe 335 grand somewhere.
Is there a benefit to just paying off the 330,000?
Well, we're getting charged I don't know, what is
I
it?
think their discount rate's like
6.
5.25 or something.
Milliman's is very conservative to their credit. Yeah, it's I think 5% or 5.5.
Yeah, it's under 6.
So if I do the math right, I think it's like 50,000. If it's 70%, it takes 50,000 more to get you to 80.
Or no,
I can't be
think,
Oh, a $50,000 check.
we don't
tomorrow.
know what Cal
We
Pers
don't
is gonna-
know. They haven't given us. They're doing their actuarial evaluation now. We don't know what they're going to tell us. My guess is based on the agency's financial position, which is basically zero money set aside in any sort of reserves, and we just bill our member cities every year for what we cost. If I were them, I'd say I want 90%, and I think that they have a lot of leeway on what percentage funded. As I understand, they have a lot of leeway on what percentage funded they require for a new agency to come in, based on the overall financial strength of the agency.
So it'd be about
Yeah,
70,000.
Yeah, something like that. Per 10% bump, something like that.
Speaking of what Jimmy was saying, actually, as far as don't lose it, as we became liable for the balances, theoretically, should we have CASA's balance sheet totaling up to ours, or at least 32% of it? You know what I mean? Should we have a new entity number in here? You know what I mean? I don't know, Fund 28, our percentage
New
of CASA.
liability. It is now an actual liability, right?
I was actually wondering, like, legally, if we had to.
It hasn't gotten picked up. That is a very good question.
We can check on it.
Yeah.
We have to report our pension liability in our financial statements. I don't know under GAAP or GASB, but that would also.
Feels
be
like it
liability.
should.
It feels like it should.
So it feels to me like the right thing to do is report it
Report it.
and
If
Well,
nothing,
book it as a
if nothing
liability.
else, in a footnote.
How's that different from the sheriff's liability? Do we report that one?
No, because we contract with the sheriffs. We are not a owner.
we're not a member.
So
Orange
in theory-
County Fire Authority,
in theory,
yes.
you could leave.
Orange County Fire Authority, we're in a joint powers authority like CASA, that their unfunded pension liabilities do transfer to the 25 or whatever it
Are they
is.
on our balance?
Member cities now.
Yeah,
But they're actually getting close to being fully funded. They've been working a plan for about 7-8 years. And with the huge returns they had last year, and I think they're over 90 now.
The reason why I agree, like why aren't why isn't that on our? The difference is we don't control any of that money.
Still
Goes
liability.
directly, although it's still our liability, right? They just take the money directly.
GAAP
out
may
of
not
our
have caught up
profits.
with the change in the California law.
Right. It's one of the reasons. Very good questions. Why I'm bringing this up? Like
Yeah.
I don't want to lose sight of it. I'd rather book it as a liability and
There's
notes there and plan to it than pretend like it doesn't exist. Not have it anymore.
yeah, it's almost like steal their balance sheet and
You can't fix it.
Times
if
it
you
by
don't know it's
32%.
broken, so. So
But why wouldn't fire authority have to be on there as well?
no, I don't think, I'm gonna bet that this is not common in the United States for these joint, separate legal corporations to have pierced the corporate veil to hold
It's got to
members.
be unique to the state of California and public agencies. Honestly.
But I'm talking off the top of my head now, but I know that it's pretty unique. I don't know that we were the first, but it's not something commonly talked about at government finance officers in any of the discussions I've seen. So.
Curious, yeah. That could take a long time to go up and add up your fractions of your random balance sheets.
Yeah, I wouldn't even know. It's like with the Orange County Fire Authority, it's going to be a similar. I think you're going to have to do a pro rata distribution based on
every
how
account.
much property tax is received from Dana Point residents toward the Orange County Fire Authority. And then you have to get to back out things that are regional responsibilities of the fire authority that come out of the county's tax. I know, it gets ugly.
Yeah, I would think.
All right, so I would recommend that we've informed the FRC of this being out there, and that we don't have enough information yet from CalPERS. So as far as options, I think our discussion on options is kind of limited until we know what they're going to demand. But let's assume, if we assume they demand nothing, that 75% funded is good enough, do we want to do something with funding this, or because there's nothing stopping the city from getting,
Just clearing ourselves and writing a check, right?
and
just
then
be done with it.
any negative going forward from the date we write our check, we would get a pro rata distribution of any new liability, but we're not going to own 700,000 and whatever changes that come with that, because it's going to accrue interest. And
I would, my 2 cents is, as a member of that board, I would be skeptical about writing a check in any greater proportion than our fellow member city San Clemente is gonna write. But hypothetically, we write a $334,000 check tomorrow. Dana Point is now 100% funded, but the pension plan itself is still only 82% funded, whatever that is. And San Clemente owes. Now we need somebody to keep track of.
the actuaries, when they do their reports and come up with these derived numbers, because the unfunded liability is a derived number, they do it in annual layers. So you pick up the annual layers beyond when we pay it off. I think it's totally doable.
The actuaries who do it are hired by the city of San Clemente.
Yeah, but they have policies, practices, and standards that they have to follow. They happen to use Bartel, who we also use.
Okay, I mean, as long as you guys are confident that that can't get screwed up, and that someday,
I don't think
5 or
changes-
6 years from now, when
I don't think they
we're-
could direct changes in assumptions that would negatively
Well,
impact us.
the only thing is, I mean, my initial reaction was the same as yours, because we're all here, we have this answers, it sounds great, and then 10 years from now, Bartel's gone, everyone here's gone, somebody forgets
he's
about this,
retired,
whatever.
he's the city
Whatever the case
manager of
is, but
Newport Beach.
also the percentages change every year. So what happens next year when that gets tweaked by 2 or 3 percentage points, and they're like, well, not only do you have to figure out that new base, but, and it gets like so exponentially, so many moving parts because of the percentage. So I agree with you, it's like if San Clemente said, if PERS said you have to do it, then you both have to
And
do
we
it.
both do it, and I would like to do it in equal
Yeah.
shares.
Because it's clean.
And earmark that money.
Yeah.
I understand we're losing the 5%
Yeah.
on it every year, but, it's just the math gets so tricky to,
Yeah. I think you're better off if you had an extra, whatever the number is here, an extra $100,000 instead of throwing it here, throw it in PERS.
Yeah, I mean, if nothing else, the discount rate is higher, so the interest charge is higher, right?
Yeah.
But I still would like to, earmark or know that liability exists, so that we're tracking it. And maybe just putting it on our books as a liability on a balance sheet is enough to, no one will forget about that. And also be prepared for, in the short term, writing at least a $70,000 check, I believe.
Whatever.
See, you probably know that. I mean, whatever that number is to get us up to get them into CalPERS.
Bartel is currently working on updated actuarial valuation.
They are, okay.
Yeah, Jake said they're San Clemente's finance officer. We should have new numbers probably soon,
Okay.
updated numbers.
Well,
Would, to solve the potential of issues like, Raul was saying, and you, think CASA could ever send us a bill every year and just clear it out? And get down back to zero every year, then all of a sudden it's not, I mean, you could do that. Cause as these percentage changes, I kind of agree, like I tend to think that could get mucked up, but if you cleared it out.
You have to write the check to the pension plan, or the unfunded liability will still be there.
Gotta
Yes,
write
you
the check.
You can pay off your unfunded liability. There are agencies in that enviable position that can do that.
We can't, they can't, I guess transfer, I was gonna say make a transaction, but just transfer it to our balance sheets. So we couldn't write them a $334,000 check.
There would still be an unfunded liability with the pension plan,
Because of San Clemente.
unless we have some kind of legal agreement that defines how much is ours and how much is theirs. There's still an unfunded liability at the pension plan. Even if CASA has our cash in their account. So
Okay. Okay.
continue the discussion.
I mean, I don't think we need to take any action. If
You are gonna research if we can put that on the balance sheet so we can make sure we can.
I'm almost certain that we can't put it on the balance sheet because it's not gonna be GAAP.
Okay.
But there's an argument that we could include it in our footnotes so that it's disclosed. That is an auditor question. And it will probably make their head hurt unless they have JPAs. And they're already looking at this, and I'm pretty sure they probably have JPAs. We'll ask.
Yeah.
the possibility does exist that CalPERS could come back to CASA before this body meets again and says, hey, we're ready to let you in, here's what the dollar amount is. I mean, I guess I would ask the group, this doesn't really need to be a motion, but if no one sees any problem with paying whatever the minimum required is to get into CalPERS, and then it sounds like there's even some interest in just paying more than that.
It doesn't sound like we have a choice to not pay the minimum.
Right. Well, we could not get into CalPERS.
Well,
Sure. If we didn't have the money, we could.
So is there a motion in there?
I don't know if there needs to be.
I think we'd wanna, if we wanna move on it to council, we'd wanna
With a
motion
specific
from
action.
FRC.
you make a motion.
What do you think, Mike, to recommend to the city council to authorize funding it up to 90%? I mean, I'm picking numbers arbitrarily.
Why don't, since we have a hard number and the difference between 70,000 and 334,000 from our unassigned fund balance that we have excess right now, I would either make a motion second or vote for a recommendation that the FRC supports spending up to $334,720
Up to, yeah.
to take
okay.
care of this unfunded liability.
And then we'll make the decision. We might do less than that if it doesn't make sense, but up to. Yeah. So I'll make a motion that we ask the city council, or recommend to the city council to authorize spending up to 330, whatever the number is in the agenda report, to pay off the CASA unfunded pension line.
Second.
And is the thought that you, up to is the max obviously, but you would do whatever San Clemente does? Probably.
I would, right, when I personally wouldn't think it would be, even though we're authorizing up to, if we can't convince San Clemente to do the same, if they do half, I think I would probably want to do half.
Yeah.
I just think it's prudent to, unless we can guarantee that the auditors can keep track of this and make sure that we don't end up double paying down the road someday, and that the accrued interest all keeps going to San Clemente at that point, and doesn't get shared equally, because that
Sounds like you're gonna have a call with Mary Beth
yeah.
Yeah, Bartow.
at
If
Bartow.
they can guarantee that, then I would probably just clear it out, right?
Yeah.
If they can't guarantee that, or if that looks tricky or messy, that, to me, it might just keeping track of the accrued interest.
Yeah.
Once we have zero and there, it's all gotta go to, all that interest has to go to them on that amount. And then on anything new, we start getting small percentages for interest. I don't know, I don't like paying more than San Clemente does. I sit on the board with them, I don't.
The way the actuarials are done though,
Mhm.
the gains and losses in every year are tracked separately. So
So that it shouldn't be an issue.
in my mind, it's not, but
Well,
I could be oversimplifying it as well, so.
Well, if you look at the most recent, the Bartel actuary we have, they do split, because San Clemente kept their retirees when they moved in the Milliman plan, when they went to CalPERS.
Mhm.
So, it's broken up by San Clemente and CASA.
Mhm.
So it's possible maybe they can break it up, CASA and then subgroup to Dana Point, San Clemente. But we check with the actuarial to see if they could do that.
I'm confident the detail is in their modeling, cause they have to keep track of it by year. Cause
Oh.
each year is a different amortization base, but I could be wrong, so.
if they could do
So how about
that,
this,
then
amend the motion to include in a prudent manner that protects future city interests.
I'm amenable to that. Yes.
Do
Who
we
seconded
need
it?
to include that we're gonna contribute equally to San Clemente?
I just put it,
I think that's pretty.
You know,
He just did a
Fancy way.
catch-all. We're either gonna do equal to San Clemente or higher if we can guarantee
Yeah.
that it's
They're not gonna.
that we can protect our future financial
Okay,
interests.
who seconded the motion?
I did.
Screw.
Second.
You're okay with the amendment?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call.
Member Federico,
Yes.
Member Killebrew,
yes.
Member Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost,
Yes.
Chair Mesco.
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
Thank you, guys. That was, tedious but important.
Okay, we'll move on to item 6, section 115, trust pension liability update. Staff report, please.
Yeah, so last FRC meeting, we announced that we were gonna issue an RFP for section 115 trust services. Staff did issue the RFP and we received 4 responses. After review of the proposals, staff interviewed both CalPERS, which has their Sept program, and PARS, which has their pension rate stabilization program. And then did a deeper dive in those 2 proposals. And I'm just gonna go briefly over the Sept plan. There's basically 2 investment strategies with the Sept plan. Strategy 1, their estimated net return is about 5%. Their strategy 2 is 4%. Now it's important to note that those expected returns were formulated when they implemented those plans back in 2019 and haven't been updated. And if you probably look at actual market returns and activity, it's probably less than that. And they are going through a review process now to see, they're probably gonna have to mix up their investments in order to actually make those returns. Kind of similar to what they did with the ALM process with the PERF for the main retirement plan. And also important to note that CalPERS staff directs the investments of the Sept program. So if you put money in there, you have the same people managing those investments as you do in the pension plan. And the second option we looked at was with PARS, their pension rate stabilization plan. And they actually offer investment strategies with both Vanguard and Highmark Capital. Highmark Capital is a little bit more expensive. They're about 60 basis points. And they've worked with Highmark quite a while. And then more recently, they started offering 4 investment options with Vanguard, which is a little bit more, not as expensive. It's about 30 basis points. I should go back and say the Sept program is 25 basis points. So not that much difference. Staff is recommending PARS, the PARS program, because it does offer the city a chance to diversify its investments away from CalPERS. You're basically not, the cost is about 5 basis points, which really isn't that much. And you get the 4 investment options, and you can invest in more than one of the options. Like you can put a little bit more money in the conservative or the balanced. And I thought it was interesting to note, so CalPERS, their pension retirement fund made 21.3% as of 6/30/21. The Vanguard strategies, there's two strategies. The growth made 30.86 and the balance made 24.26. So even these strategies we could invest in our money actually made a little bit more than actually CalPERS did. And also PARS, we would get increased administrative help for staff, and also their customer service is really, really good. So staff's recommendation, we're hoping to bring a resolution to council on March 1st to go ahead and go with PARS as the administrator of the Section 115 trust, and then come back at the April 26th FRC meeting, and we can have PARS here, as well as we'll probably have someone from Vanguard on the phone to discuss the different investment options and kind of educate the group on and maybe get some direction from the FRC on how they want to invest the money. We do have $4 million set aside for pension obligations. So that's that part of it. But I did also want to give you a pension liability update based on that 21.3% return as of 6/30/21. So as our last valuation, which was June 30th, 2020, our combined unfunded liability was about $7.5 million. We worked with GovInvest, who is a company the city contracts with to help with modeling different actuarial scenarios, and they're estimating our pension liability going down to $4.9 million. So you're going from about 77.5% funded to about 86.5% funded. So I know we have $4 million, and you're looking at now unfunded liability about $4.9 million. So what we'll also do is we'll bring back some GovInvest modeling at the April 26th meeting to maybe, do we put it all in a Section 115 trust and just level off the city's payments for a certain period of time? Do we pay off some bases and get some interest savings? But we'll bring back that on the 26th as well.
So just a quick sidestep, the council had directed setting aside $5 million, and then when COVID hit, we started seeing the hotels tank. I think it was in May of 2020, right after we saw impacts. We grabbed $1 million out of that and put it, basically into our unassigned fund balance. We also grabbed some of we were going to transfer, I'll say it was $2 million to the community investment account for future capital projects. We kept that in the general fund. So we were ready with $5 million back then, but it stands right now at $4 million. When we closed the books for FY21 and took a report to FRC and then council last September, we mentioned that we had contributed $1 million. We want to take a look at that. We want to see how this year's performing, and then decide how much to throw over the fence to the community investment account, how much to have in the unfunded pension liability account. So we're still working toward that. In hindsight, waiting, I think, was a good idea, particularly with the Omicron just now hitting. So we'll be able to see by the time we go to council in March with our mid-year report, and talk about where to put the excess unassigned fund balance, where we'll have at least seen what happened in January. We'll get some indications from the hotels on how they were doing in February, to make some measured, informed decisions. Everything right now looks like whatever the numbers come back from the actuarials for this, and our discussions with GovInvest, I think we're going to have a good grounding for a discussion on policy decisions on what to fund, what to pay off, what our target's going to be. Keep hearing even from the chief actuary at CalPERS, you don't want to go to 100%. So there's that also, so.
Mike, in your mind, and you may not know this, so we're at 86% now. Is the sweet spot that we, plus, when we take into account what we've got invested in the 115, we are at 100%, or no, we still should be up below that, even with whatever we throw into the 115? Is there
You can't overfund the PERS account. It's tax laws or something to do with that. In section 115, and if we wanted to push it toward 100, I believe we're okay. But even then, even the folks that, are advising us on the investments, nobody's saying shoot for the 100%. I know that everybody policy-wise and, public, perception-wise wants to say we're 100% funded. You talk to the chief actuary at CalPERS and he thinks you're 100% funded when you're in between 90 and 95, just because of the swings that can happen in any given year. That's my quote, but just based on all the presentations I've heard over the years, you don't want to go overfunded because you're talking about liabilities that go out 50 years.
So 90, okay, that was my question. Okay, so
70 years.
Okay, that at least helps
now
me.
you can listen to C because she might have a different take on things.
No, I agree. I think, because what happened was when they passed PEPRA, so before if you were overfunded, you can put whatever you were overfunded towards your normal cost. But they passed PEPRA and now you can't do that. So you would have basically a credit on your unfunded liability until there's losses to offset that credit. So you kind of want to stay around 90-95. I would agree with that. Because you never want to have that credit sitting with CalPERS on the books, so.
Because they'll never have them back either.
Yeah,
I'm with
they
you,
won't
I'm
write
with
you a check.
No,
Yeah,
I'm
they
with
won't
you.
give it back, that's for sure.
I'd like to draw a distinction between funded, which means we've given the money to PERS, PARS, whoever, no one in the last discussion, and committed, right? Like, I'm okay with committing, earmarking, whatever, blocking off 100% of what our liability is, and if that means moving, another $913,000 over from the hopes and dreams account into the pension fund, even if we don't put it into a 115 trust, and even if we don't give it to CalPERS, having it set aside, I can't think of it any more fiscally responsible than having carved aside every penny that we owe on a liability. We can then walk around and say all of our liabilities are accounted for. Right. Committed, at least. I don't know what the right word is in government accounting, but funded means you've actually given them.
Section 115 is a commitment. We can't take it back for anything other than paying for pension costs, but it can supplant an annual pension contribution.
It can supplant a future pension cost. So if
It's a
it does
savings
better
account
than
too.
we
It's a savings
think,
account too.
then there'll be a windfall to the general fund some year in the future because we'll pay it out of 115 instead of general fund.
To the extent of what our annual contribution that's required,
So I'm one vote in here, but I would be happy to recommend to the city. And I don't know, you guys were talking about we're probably going to have a greater unassigned fund balance than we anticipated. I love the hopes and dreams accounts, but to me, I don't care. I'm differentiating between funded percentage and commitment percentage. I would love to see 100% in this case. Using the latest numbers, 4.91 million estimated, put into a 115 trust. And now maybe again, realizing maybe we take some of that 4.9 million and directly pay off some of the longer term, higher
Some of the longer basis.
Points, and then all the rest of it go into a 115 trust. And I will support, by the way, so that I don't have to talk anymore, I will support the Vanguard PARS,
The PARS plan with Vanguard as
PARS
the investment.
Vanguard plan. That's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I have a question. The other two firms just did not provide a good proposal. Just curious.
So
Chandler
Chandler
and
Asset Management, they provide individual employer trusts. And we are recommending a multi-employer trust just because $4 million is a lot of money for anybody, right, or any organization, but they usually when you're gonna do an individual trust, it's usually much larger amounts. I think one of their clients is Irvine, and their trust is like $50 million, because there's a lot more work and administration and managing the investments. Keenan, they've been in the business not as long as PARS and PERS. They have mostly like school districts, which doesn't disqualify them. And also they're mainly, that company is, we actually contract with Keenan for our employee benefits. They're a benefits broker. So they're kind of in a different business. And really PARS and PERS are kind of the leaders in the Section 115 trusts.
PARS is the long-standing big dog for Section 115s. But they have been in the business for the
they do provide other retirement
post-retirement healthcare.
Yeah, they do the
like
OPEB
13
trust.
years, but they've only been in the Section 115 for pensions for 3 or 4 years.
PERS is only since 2019.
Yeah. So they've only got 67 million in assets with 57 clients, where PARS has 2.2 billion under investment with 251 agencies. So PARS is the big dog.
Got it. Okay. I'll just offer, from a municipal investor and credit perspective, which is what I do for a living, 90% is considered a very good funding ratio. 80% is adequate. Once you're like in the 70s, low 70s, certainly in the 60s, it's a red flag. Like, it can get really bad from here. So the reason a lot of people don't like to be fully funded is really because you tell everybody you're fully funded, and then CalPERS underperforms tomorrow, next year, and they're like, what happened? I thought you guys were fully funded. How come we have any liability? And sometimes there's that issue, and then the other issue is some people say, maybe not so much as in previous years, but if you're fully funded or overfunded, then the pensions, the unions want more. So it's like, hey, you can afford it, you're overfunded.
That's
so
what happened in
that's what
the
started
mid to
this
late
all.
90s.
That's what started all this. But I thought the report was very well done, very logical, and I totally am in similar agreement with your recommendation. I do think that when you have the ability to have a 115 trust, why would you give more money to PERS if you're basically diversifying yourself? And we all know that PERS will have underperformance coming up. You know, I think the outlook is really above expected GDP growth for the next couple of years, but come 24, 25, clearly there'll be some dips, corrections. That's right around the corner. So I know you made a motion, right? Was that a motion?
No, I did not. I had
Okay,
a question, and then I threw out
Okay.
I just threw out where I stood. I could turn that into a motion if you like.
I mean, this is a receive and discuss, so I don't think we need to vote on it.
We're coming back on the April meeting,
Yeah.
right?
Right, well,
She
we
wants to go to
want
council
March to go with PARS,
to go with PARS. So
but coming back to this committee and bringing PARS and Vanguard
Yeah.
here to talk about the different.
But do we
investment
vote on this
portfolios.
item? We don't vote on this item, no.
We can make a recommendation.
we can
to
vote on a
council
recommendation to the council.
to go with PARS.
Okay.
But we don't identify the specific strategy.
No, and
Not yet.
That'll be
I talked to PARS and they said it's very common to go ahead and, because we don't pay anything until we put money into the trust. And we wouldn't do that until we know how we were gonna what we were gonna invest in.
So maybe recommend staff taking this to council authorizing contract with PARS, and then direct staff to go work on options and bring it back.
Second.
Got that?
Yeah.
Is this why you record this?
Yeah. Okay.
All right, we have a first and second, please take a vote.
Member Federico,
Yes.
Member Killebrew,
Yes.
Member Mitchell,
Yes.
Vice Chair Frost,
Yes.
Chair Mitchell.
Yes.
This motion passes by a vote of 5-0.
7-4 down to 4-9. God, you don't see that much in like this world anymore.
Flopping.
I mean, the one question that I have for PARS and for
It's
our
awesome.
April report is like, you have 4 options, right? And to me, it's like comparing an apple, an orange, and a banana and a grape. So if you look at the results, you expect the growth to have the highest rate, and it does, since it's short-term, whenever inception, which is very, recent. But it just follows the logical, what you would expect, right? So when I look at this, and I used to be on another board for 20 years, and we had an endowment. When these people come in, I always say, what are you measuring performance against? So how much risk are we taking? I know growth is more risk than balance, which is more than conservative, which is more than fixed income. And how are we gonna measure performance so that we know how we're doing versus how we should be doing? It's not, this is just how much stomach do you have for risk, but I would assume we're gonna be, yeah, I assume we're gonna be like on balance or growth, cause it's a retirement fund, it's a long-term fund.
Yeah, it should be as risky as possible.
Yeah,
that's the.
But how do we measure performance? Like against what?
Why
How are
not?
we gonna know how we're doing?
I think
How do we know how we're gonna be doing?
Okay, yeah.
So, what's the benchmark? And the benchmark can't just be like the S&P 500 index. So, oh, we're gonna compare the Russell to that. Like, what is it? How do we know if you're doing well?
Yeah, we'll definitely have a Vanguard rep and he can answer all those questions.
What would the
What's
benchmark
beta?
be?
What's the beta of the fund, right?
Like the great example I can tell you is in this not-for-profit that I was on the board for 20 years. The person would come in and say, we outperformed the Barclays, index fund. And then I would say, look at the fund they had us in, which was a total return fund from one of the big guys, TCW or somebody. And I would say the TCW fund outperformed it, but it's more heavily weighted, significantly, meaningfully more in mortgages, which are more volatile. So shoot, of course we're supposed to.
It better outperform, right?
But did we outperform them enough for the additional risk we take? That's what we should know. That kind of stuff, like.
Makes sense.
The next item is staff report. Is there any staff reports?
Yeah, I just wanted to update you guys on upcoming budget calendar items. So we have the mid-year review coming to City Council on March 1st. Long-term financial discussion on March 15th. And the next FRC meeting on April 26th. And I also wanted to bring up that if the council approves the strategic plan that that's been working on, that staff will bring to the next FRC meeting any possible needs for resourcing any of the items in the updated strategic plan. We'll also bring at the next FRC meeting financial policies, review of the financial policies. And I also want to let you all know that staff is very close to making a decision on budgeting software, which we're super excited about, and hopefully bring a contract to City Council on
I
March 1st.
recommend Excel spreadsheets.
Yes.
They
Jeremy is very good at Excel.
They won't open my Excel spreadsheets.
I made my
My
own.
account.
Why does the laptop start like smoking all the macros, VLOOKUPs?
I had to go into the old columns from like 2008, 9, 10, copy and paste just the numbers so that there's no formulas.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Because it was dimming the lights on City Hall.
So dangerous.
And that was it for staff reports.
Great. What about Finance Review Committee member reports? Any?
I would like to thank member now Mitchell for her 2 terms consecutively as the chair here, and thank you, Raul, Mr. Chairman, for being here and doing this. Your input is invaluable. And staff, as always, thank you for the super professional reports. I know we take things kind of light in here, we joke around a little bit. Part of me thinks that we're able to do that because of the confidence we have in the system, but we all take this very seriously, and I appreciate that.
I second that.
Aye.
And I think last is adjournment. So the next meeting will be held April 26th, 4 p.m. in the same room.